Welcome to the Hive from Pollen VC, your destination for the latest thinking about mobile gaming, apps, and what you need to scale your business. And introducing Peggy Ann Sauls, founder of Mobile Groove, mobile analyst, tech consultant, and your host for today's show.
So they say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, these days have been tough times indeed for publishers and app marketers in every vertical, really, not just gaming. IDFA, ATT, more privacy, less data purity, as one gaming app marketer put it to me. It pushes marketers to take new approaches to UA and scramble to build something more lasting, which is brand. We'll talk about both. We'll talk about the impact on UA, and we'll talk about the path to brand and brand equity with Peter Fodor. He is founder and CEO of AppAgent. Peter, welcome to the Hive.
Hi, Peggy. Thanks for having me. It's great to finally speak with you on a podcast. We know each other for years, and today here we are.
Absolutely. I think you're coming into your own because, you came from an advertising agency background, and here we are. We're talking really about brand, something that is in your wheelhouse completely. You founded AppAgent in 2015 to help mobile brands and mobile publishers optimize and grow their business. You build product, marketing, analytics, optimize organic and paid user acquisition. You even design compelling creatives. And for all this, you're recognized. AppAgent was, of course, awarded App Marketing Agency of the Year in 2018 and 2020. So you definitely know growth, but this is growth in a different way. So before we talk about growth and what you can do, let's define it, because growth used to be about hacks, but what is growth now for your clients?
Today, user acquisition is actually a business model competition. So the higher LTV you have, the more you can afford to invest back into UA, and the faster you will grow. So I would say that for everyone out there, the main focus should be, when they want to grow, to maximize the lifetime value of their users, because then they can actually win the bid wars on Facebook and Google, these two channels that are basically distribution mechanism for mobile apps and games nowadays. They can win these bid wars and attract the best quality of users at scale. So that's something what we are recommending our partners to do firsthand, and only then it makes sense to focus on scalability.
Mm-hmm. So it's about LTV. I won't go there because, of course, there are so many different ways to calculate it. I will ask you, though, just as a point of curiosity, are you using a different formula, or is it the ones we know? Do you have a little hack on what is LTV and how to maintain it?
This differs vastly for different types of products. I can maybe show you this top grossing chart that I grabbed yesterday from the App Store. You can see, YouTube on top, Tinder, and then also Candy Crush and Clash Royale on the bottom. For Clash Royale and Candy Crush, you'll build the LTV around retention, average revenue per daily active user. You'll probably include some K factors, so the virality to be included in the formula, and that will be roughly the basic model. But for Tinder or YouTube, HBO, Disney Plus, they are subscription-based apps. So in that case, it's much more important to understand how you are able to retain users. That's the core of the LTV when you are running subscription-based business. And for example, Tinder is charging $20 for Tinder Plus or $30 for Tinder Gold. And if you expect to retain the user for, let's say, 12 months, that's a completely different LTV at the end of the day, and completely different formula as well. And that's why these apps and games are not only top grossing, but also the biggest apps and games in terms of number of users, because they can reinvest the profits back into user acquisition and be really that dominant in their category.
You bring up an interesting model that works for them, but of course, not everyone has a blockbuster title. Not everyone has a blockbuster brand. But what does everyone else do? What do you tell your clients?
So the business economics stands on, let's say, two main pillars. One is the profit margin, and the second is the payback window. The profit margin is actually made by the revenue you generate and how much the user costs you. And for subscription-based apps that we just covered, it's how long you can retain the user. But what's even more important, not many companies are aware of that, especially if they are at an early stage, is the importance of the ability to quickly reinvest the money they generate back into UA. So basically how to speed up the growth. And you have a couple of options. You can either secure a credit line from your investor. We have recently saw news by Metacore that they got a new credit line by Supercell. But you can also use services such as Pollen VC that actually give you the funds you generated by, let's say, in a purchase the next day. So you don't have to wait until Apple and Google sends you funds on your account, which usually takes around 45 days. You can reinvest the money the day after, and then the whole UA just can scale up much faster. And over the course of a year, this makes a massive difference.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, you say it makes a massive difference. Have you worked with clients that are working and using this model to say, hey, I can, I have that window of opportunity, I can reinvest, I can power that flywheel, and I can maybe go 2 rounds of UA in the time it would normally take for Google or Apple to pay me?
Yeah, usually even many more than just 2 rounds. For example, with Pixonic, I believe there's even a case study by Pollen VC and Pixonic,
Oh,
but
yeah.
also other companies, both like gaming and non-gaming. So especially when you are at a stage when you are scaling up and you don't want to give the equity in exchange for basically marketing budget, then this is a good option, I believe.
You also crush it with creatives. And you, of course, don't just advise your clients, you actually help them build them. Now, you mentioned that you have clients who aren't just using it to power UA and power campaigns, but to pre-qualify the players. What is that? Can you unpack that just a bit?
There are 2 options or 2, let's say, approaches. First one is that you try to create the ad as relevant as possible to the product. That's, for example, what Supercell requires on us when we are working on Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, to stay really true to the game. Also because of the community that's very sensitive to anything that's not exactly in the game. But then you have approaches, and here goes even not only PlayerX, but even Rovio, another client of ours, where they want to attract people through creatives that are a bit further from the game experience. And we have to accept that both options make a lot of sense, and it differs product by product. If you have a casual game, then of course being less truthful is a bit more fine. The audience players are not that sensitive. If you have a hardcore game such as Clash Royale or Clash of Clans, then it's becoming an issue. But just to frame it, I have a visual here for Metacore's merge mention. And here I want to illustrate the basic process, how the journey looks like when someone is thinking about installing an app or game. This is for Metacore's merge mention. And I want to highlight that the ad in the first 3 seconds has a role to grab the attention. That's the only purpose of the opening sequence. Then in the next, let's say, 10, 15 seconds, it's about the interest. And here, the ad should basically give an idea what's the game about in, let's say, 20%. But then the store represent the game as accurate as possible, because their decision actually happens. So at that point, when you are clicking the install button, you should be 80% qualified or have a good understanding of the product as a user, because once you click, we advertisers pay, and you onboard the user into your product, and then you have to deliver the promise. So this is the old AIDA model: attention, interest, desire, and action. I still believe this is true, and it pretty much depends, how you will tackle these 4 stages. But I think that generally this is still very valid, and we are using it in our work.
But I want to zoom out, because the prize is the brand. A lot of companies in a lot of verticals, but now increasingly in gaming, they are looking at building brand. I want to understand, first of all, some of the details around building brand. There's the concept of brand, but there's the timing of brand. I mean, is it a question of critical mass? When does a gaming company need to start thinking about brand?
That's a great question. And I believe that first you have to verify that the product is scalable. That's usually the goal of a soft launch. And once you see that you have something really tangible and something that can be a big game or big IP even, then it makes sense to lay down the foundations. I think that many companies do this quite late, and there was a discussion on Clubhouse in February where our mutual friend Jessica Bichego from Blinkist mentioned that they hit certain like local maximum with performance marketing, and at that point they realized this is actually exhausted channel or exhausted strategy, and they need to build a brand, and they started defining the brand from the ground up just to amplify the performance marketing with a brand 2 years later. And I think this graph shows that very nicely. You start with the performance marketing that's all about the soft launch and the initial couple of months, sometimes even a few years. But you should also build the brand over time, because at some point the importance of brand will exceed the importance of performance marketing, and it will basically amplify your efforts. So that's important to keep in mind, because many companies leave it until the point when they hit the wall, and that's too late.
What are the components of brand that you're seeing? Because you can dissect it down all the way down to sound. A lot of people are saying audio is something that companies need to pay more attention to as they build brands. What are the moving parts for you?
Yeah, so even if you don't build the brand intentionally, you are building it anyway. All the marketing activities, all the communication, that's creating some feeling about your product, service, or a company. And that's something that many marketers don't get fully, especially those with the performance mindset. I see it as an onion, and here you can see a nice visual where you have this brand core in the circle, in the main circle, and that's actually what's the reason why people should care. What's your uniqueness? What's your tone of voice, and even the brand language? And that's something what you should define very early on, as I already mentioned, ideally in the soft launch stage. And that's something what everyone in the company, social media teams, performance marketers, people responsible for live ops or tournaments, they should have the same let's say view on communicating the product. Then there's the second layer, brand story. And by brand story I mean that you have something deeper than just this essence, and that could be a founder story. Kevin Systrom visiting France and getting the idea about Instagram, or Daniel Ek and Spotify and his fight for making the music available for everyone and generally disrupting the music industry. So that's the story, and it could be about founders, about how the company originated, about the characters in the game, whatever. Something again emotional that touches people. And only then the brand activities are what people usually see as a brand. That's these commercials or events or partnerships. There you need the budget. There you really need to invest into all these activities. But the first two steps are something that you can define without spending a penny, and it will significantly help you to be clear to your consumers and to give them a reason why they should download your game.
Two really important points you're making. First of all, everyone owns the brand in the company. Everyone feeds into it. Everyone informs it. Everyone communicates it. And if you have that, then the brand activities are on top of that. And that's something that you can build on low budget. But I would like to get to the brand activities because, of course, that brings us to the channels, right? Jessica, as you said, hers was TV. A lot of games looking at TV, others looking at playables. What are you seeing in the channel mix as what is effective to communicate and amplify brand?
I don't believe that there are channels specifically great for building a brand. Of course, TV has a massive reach, but you can build a brand even by social media post on Instagram. What I see is critical. And again, that goes back to what you just said about everyone owns a brand, and me saying that you build a brand even without you noticing that, is a consistency. And I think that if you are consistent in how you speak to the audience, how you present the product, here I have a nice example of Headspace, that they have very consistent banners, they have very consistent story listing with their post on Instagram. That creates you the picture, and that actually combines the effect together. So I wouldn't say that you should really think about where I can leverage the brand the most, but how do I make sure that I'm speaking the same language every single time?
Brands need to drive awareness. They need to make it also easy for performance marketers to fill the funnel. So there's this interconnectivity between them. There's a dependence. What are you looking at, or what are you telling your clients rather to look at as the metrics that are going to fill the funnel, but also build the brand?
I do believe that it's really that connected together. And Clara Rosan, who's a UI manager at Gameloft, mentioned the other day that for them, the brand amplifies the performance marketing, which, if you put it like very simply, means lower cost per install. Because if you have strong brand recognition, you will see better CTR on your ads, better conversion in the store, and therefore the IPM, the impression per mille, that combines these two metrics together, will be also better, and that leads to lower cost of the install. So it's really that connected, and that's why I show this graph with how the brand starts and how the performance starts, and at some point you will see these synergies. It's a long-term thing. You wouldn't build a brand overnight, of course, but you can see examples of Supercell, Best Fiends, Lily's Garden, even PlayerX, many others that if you want to play the game big, then this is a necessity, and it's the only way how you can scale beyond performance marketing channels.
Peter, I want to ask you a couple things, just straightforward. This is what you're seeing in the market. What's going on? I just want you to weigh in because, hey, you're out there. This is what you do. So one thing we're hearing about, maybe it's a blip on the radar. Maybe it's not, higher CPMs.
That's unfortunately a fact, and I've seen in the recent newsletter by Adam Lovalo that he measured 80% growth year over year, which is a massive problem, and we have seen this across our clients as well. To be honest here, I think that many businesses will close this year. It's becoming very difficult to stay profitable. And the question is, how long this will take. Obviously, everyone tries to maximize all the users who haven't updated to iOS 14.5 yet. So that's my explanation of why it's so high at the moment. But I don't think CPMs will drop down back to, let's say, 2020. This will lead to consolidation on the market. There will be companies buying other companies, building the portfolio of games, using cross promotion, and really, moving the customer from one game to another, but still collecting the revenue on your bank account. So this will be a big trend, and the sad one that many companies will fail to make it.
You touched upon it, but I'd like you to drill a little deeper, Peter. Consolidation. What can we expect?
Yeah, no, so it makes a lot of sense that companies such as Zynga are buying the others. They try to build, let's say, a portfolio of games that will give them the first-party data that will be possible to cross-promote. And eventually, there will be a couple of big players. If you look at the movie industry, that's what happened there dozens of years ago. There are, let's say, 5 big studios, now disrupted by Netflix and Amazon Prime and the others. But there are not like thousands of studios such as we see in the mobile space. So this is a natural path. The market matures, and I think it's nothing wrong about it. The question is, how the opportunities will be for newcomers. But we have a couple of great startups in the portfolio as well, and they are competitive. So if you have a great idea and strong team, I believe there's always a way how to grow the business.
What can you give us as a top opportunity you see on the horizon?
I believe there will be lots of focus on product optimization and retention strategies, much more than in the past, especially for non-gaming apps. Speaking of UA, I just listened to a podcast this morning where the speaker confirmed my feeling that TikTok is not going to go away. It's becoming the main network for not only young generation, but already like 25 to 30 years old people are trying the platform. And I think this might be, the third major network in the future. So that will require, again, completely different approach to storytelling. It's much more fast-paced than anything else. It's much more about user-generated content and ads that don't look as an ad. I would definitely recommend companies, especially having a product for, let's say, 15 to 25 years old customers, to focus there and get ready for this channel to become dominant in the future.
Dominant. Now that is ominous indeed. And we talked about you're listening to a podcast this morning. I'd like to know what you listen to or read to stay up to date on the industry. Peter, what's your hit list?
Well, I have so many sources I follow, but just to name a few, who's helping me with my FOMO is Sylvain Gaucher with Growth Gems.
Oh, yeah.
He's summarizing a ton of content, and if I feel that there's too much to consume myself, I'm checking his summaries. Then our friend Thomas Petit's newsletter that comes out, let's say, every month. That's always not only inspirational, but fun to read. And last but not least, everything by Eric Ziffert. It's weekly newsletters, podcasts that go deep on certain topics. If you just follow these three resources, you are pretty much covered.
Absolutely. And the Slack channels. Don't forget.
Of course.
Mobile Dev Memo Slack. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my go-to place.
So you have obviously a lot that you read, a lot that you digest, and a lot of really valuable information and advice that you're giving your clients. You said you had a couple startups with some cool ideas, and I have had a wonderful brainstorm, a wonderful conversation with you, Peter. Thank you so much for being on the Hive and sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening.
Stay up to date with our show schedule by signing up for alerts at Pollen VC. That's where you'll also find our suite of financial modeling tools to help you plan and manage your business growth.